Welcome to the party, everyone. We have partnered with Detroit Tech Watch for yet another beautiful, awesomely insightful discussion. Onario and Mike, they really just hit the nail on the head every time when it comes to keeping their hand on the pulse of relevant topics in tech. And today we are blessed and honored to be talking to the co-founder of Detroit Tech Watch, Onorio Catenacci, and he is here to talk to us about searching your code. But before we get things underway, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ryan Nico. I am the Community Associate of Altimetric Collider, and we are super passionate about connecting software professionals and business leaders in a community where we can all grow and explore innovative solutions and grow together. One of our main objectives is to break down barriers between technology and business. And with that being said, we hope that this sparks your interest and makes you want to join in on the conversation. So please visit our site at collider.altimetric.com so you can check us out and learn how to become a Collider rider. And let me not forget to mention that Collider is powered by Altimetric. And Altimetric is a digital enablement company leading the charge in helping our clients transform and achieve their business goals. So if you want to hear more about how to get your company unstuck, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. But for now, Onorio, do your thing.
Okay. And by the way, I want to say right now, I really appreciate Ryan shows up every month for this and helps us out. And Ultrametric has been great to work with as partners. All right. So anyway, all the love aside here. So Ryan asked a real good question. Why do you want to search your code? And that is a really an excellent question. Part of the reason you want to search your code is because one, most code efforts are not going to be like within a week or a month or even a couple of months. As time goes on, you're going to forget things even about your own code. And also, another thing you're going to find is that when you go to search code or when you have an effort that's anything beyond trivial, you're going to have more than one developer. And while you may know your code like by heart and inside and out, you might have to search other people's code because they may have included something or not included something that you want to have. So that's part of the reason you want to search code. Another part of the reason is you might be given an unfamiliar code base and you might be trying to understand the structure of it. And so you would search through and say, okay, I see that they start off with this routine and where is this calling? What other routines is it calling? I want to see the definition of those too. So you might search that way. Okay. But really, there's two things you're really usually interested in when you're searching. One, you're interested in finding what you're looking for. And conversely, and this sounds dumb, but it's obvious, you don't want to find what you're not searching for. And it's that second part that always seems to give me trouble anyway. I don't know about anybody else. So I'm going to show you what I have heard referred to as a programmer's grep. Mike Onslow was earlier talking about a utility called grep, which has been on Unix and it's been around for a long, long time. And it's a way of searching through text files for certain like strings. And that's great. Programmer's greps are a little bit different in that they present some options that allow you to try and narrow down what you're looking for. Okay, so let me see about sharing my screen here. So let me see if I can see what I'm sharing. This is going to be interesting because I've only got the one screen. Okay, so let's say I'm in this directory, right? And this, by the way, Mike knows this, and I hope the rest of you don't mind, but this is Elixir code. And Elixir code, nothing I'm going to say is specific to Elixir code. It's just I happen to like Elixir, and Mike likes Elixir, and a few of us like Elixir. And so I'm doing a talk at the end of the month at a conference, and this is in preparation for that talk, and this is part of the reason I'm specifically working on Elixir code. Okay? So let's say I first say, okay, I want to find, and this is something specific to Linux. I want to find, can I do that? Try it this way. I find, oh, sorry. Find.
I think it might be hyphen name too.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, I think that's what I missed.
But it also says you got to separate multiple arguments with a comma. So after the word file, you'd have to do a comma.
I just had this just a minute ago. Do you know that? That's the most disgusting thing about. Hold on, let me check something. Because I just had this command.
Do you have the path that you're searching in, which would be dot or whatever? I think that's
there. It is.
Okay.
Minus type F, not file. Okay. So let me just do this. And that shows me a list of all the .ex files I've got, including EXS. To explain a little bit, an Elixir source code is typically got a .ex extension for Elixir, and .exs is for scripts, okay? Which means I want to, scripts are compiled, but they're not retained. EX files are compiled and retained. So that's the difference, okay? So now, let's say I want to find, in that set of files, I want to find a function. And the function, maybe I don't remember the name of it. So I'll just say, okay, you know what? Take that. I don't remember grep. So rather than showing you grep, I'll show you my thing I hacked together. Search. Sorry. That's what I get for doing live demos. Search. Exact. SH. It happens that in Elixir, a function starts with the keyword def, right? So now this is showing me all the lines that start with the word def. And you'll notice there's nice color highlighting. This is not something specific to this particular tool I'm using. This is just something that a lot of these tools support. But so now I'm getting defs, right? And there's lots of defs there. Now you'll notice, and I don't know how well you can see it. I'm sorry if it's hard to see. Down here on line 341, you notice there's a little pound sign and then def helper. And line 342 is a pound sign def helper. This is what I mean about not including things I don't want to include. 341 and 342 are actually commented out lines. Comments in code, if you're not familiar with like software development, it's like a way of a software developer leaving some note to himself or leaving some information for someone else for later on. You'll often see in code bases, and this is one of my pet peeves, what I would call, well, there's a rude name for it, and I'll give it the more polite name, code ghost, where it's like people have commented out large blocks of executable code and not bothered to remove them. And you're searching, and this is one of the use cases for like trying to avoid things that I don't want. You're searching, and you're going to hit these code blocks because, hey, the searcher isn't smart enough to say, hey, that's a comment, throw it out, right? So proceeding, and I get lots and lots of things back. Okay, so let me stop that for a second. So, so that's neat and that's fun. How do I do that? That's what I really care about. And this is not even like terrific because this is still, I'm grabbing, every line that starts with the word DEF, and that's probably not exactly what I want, but I'm working on this, honestly. So let me see about new share window here. Share. Okay. Now, this is that shell script that I just did. By the way, if I did not mention, if you ever have occasion to do shell scripting on Linux or Unix or anything like that, there's a great little utility called shell check. It's like a linter for shell scripts. It's terrific. You definitely want to look into using it, right? So what I've done is I've taken my act command, right? The $1 there is the first parameter that's passed to this exac.sh file. I've then said, okay, by default, I only want to search for whole words, which is the word regex here. Okay. I want to use a pager called less. Less is a special utility that allows me to go forward and backwards in the output. I want to tell it only to search files of type Elixir with the extension EX. EXS, I've already discussed those. EEX is embedded Elixir, and HEEX is a newer file extension, and it escapes me. It's for live view. But just those files. So I've already excluded, like, I don't want to search like .py for Python. I don't want to search those. I'm not interested in that right this minute. I don't want to search .html. I might want to search that later, but for right now, I'm just searching for Elixir stuff, right? Which is what this typeset does for me down here. Just Elixir stuff. Now, I've also got here, I've got a list of directories that I want to ignore. In other words, I want you to recurse into subdirectories because, again, when you're searching for code, you don't know if it's going to be in the top directory or in a directory below. So you always want to recurse in the subdirectories, but it happens that in a standard Elixir application, there's a dependencies directory, and that's all the things that you brought in, external libraries you brought in to add to your application. And chances are you don't want to search those because chances are that's code that you can't even change even if you wanted to. Well, you might want to, but you won't change it because then you get out of sync with the other code. So chances are you don't want to search it. Another one you don't want to probably search is your test directory. Now that one, I might be looking for something on my test to check it. So I might take that out. It's easy enough to take out here. But most of the time, chances are I'm not going to want to search in my test directory for any symbol I'm interested in. And the config directory is the same way. It's configuration information. Okay. So chances are, like I say, I want to search all the directories, but not those three specifically. I might also exclude some other ones. That's part of the whole point of having this like coded into this shell script that I can change it without actually having to change like what I do. I can still run exac, and once I've changed that ignore directory list, it'll just pick it up for me. Okay. Now I also want to skip a couple files. There's a mix ESS. Oh, and it reminds me. I'm going to fix this right now because I've been thinking I needed to fix this, and I'm going to live code for you. Okay. Sorry, hit the wrong button. Okay. So I don't want to look in a mix ESS usually. Sometimes I do. If I want to look in a mix ESS, then I'll open up my editor usually. Credo is what we would call a code linter, a code cleaning tool, a static checker where it looks for bad constructs in your code. Like, hey, you did this thing that is not necessarily syntactically wrong, but maybe not the very best idea either. And it will warn you about that kind of stuff. Formatter is the tool that is the part of the code that controls how your Elixir code gets formatted when you format it with the built-in Elixir formatter. And again, chances are you don't want to search that. Okay? So those files get ignored by automatically. Now, I don't think it will show. Is my terminal window still shared or not?
Yeah, it is. The exac sh is up there for us.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you I need to help another way?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. Oh, let me know.
Oh, what? So now if I search for def again, well, it's basically the same thing because I don't think def was in formatter.exs. As a matter of fact, I kind of doubt it was. But the point is that what I'm getting here is I'm getting, it's already skipping the files for me that I don't want to search. Chances are, like I say, I'm not gonna mess with anything in the formatter, not this way. I will change it, but I would change it through the file editor, not this way. So this is a good start. I'm working on like adding something to allow me to ignore lines with that comment line on the, or comment character on the front. And basically what I'll end up probably doing is I'll probably take, oh, and by the way, this is, can you see my, you can see my terminal window, right? Not my editor, my terminal window. So you remember I was mentioning less. So less is a nice little utility you have on Linux, and it may be there on Windows too. I don't know. And I definitely on Mac OS X, where I can use the word the key F to go forward in my output, B to go backward in my output, which is kind of handy because, like, hey, I've got all this output scrolled to the screen, and this way I can go forward on it. And oh wait, hold on, I missed it. I'll go back and get it. That's really kind of handy. And that's what that less thing is about. Okay. So clear that. Okay. So like I say, that's ACK. ACK, among others, and there's several others. Like there's one called AG, the Silver Searcher. One of the guys at work mentioned one called grep. Here, let me stop sharing for a second. Called grep, which is written in Rust. If you like Rust, that's might be your bag. ACK itself is written in what a language called Perl, which is really good for regular expression stuff. So like I say, that's just some preliminary stuff on ACK. I'm going to do a little bit of live coding, and I'm probably going to regret it, but I'll do it anyway. Let's see here. Share this screen. Come in. Okay. So another thing you can do with ACK that I hadn't talked about yet, and this is something I will add to my talk, is you can do a start range. I think that's right. For instance, in Elixir, we have modules that contain functions, right? Let's say I wanted to start with a module test. And let's say I wanted to search within test for, like, I don't know, X unit. Okay, and that's not right. See, even been doing it for a while, and I still got to look at stuff. ACK has a pretty nice helpful thing here. I should probably pipe that into less, shouldn't I? Range start, that's what I'm looking for. Start range, but range start. And by the way, on this range start, to talk about what Mike was speaking about earlier, this can take a regular expression here too. A regular expression will work just fine here. I'm not going to bother because I'm not sure I'm going to get anything if I do this. This tells ACK, when you're searching, search only only after lines that start with this. Def module test do. Okay. Now, yeah, there's nothing in there for that, and I don't know the code well enough to know what it should get you. But I can also, range start says start with this, but just go to the end of the file from there. There's also range end, so I can say, okay, range start, def module and I'll see how well I can remember my regular expressions. I think it's /W plus do. And if anyone knows regular expressions better than I do, please jump in because I don't know them super well. So if I do def module /W plus should give me any characters, any alphanumeric characters. It should match, I think, if I remember, like I say, if I remember my regular expressions right. And I do range end, that says, okay, the range starts where I get def module some word do, and the range ends when I reach the end. Now, this would not work because what will end up happening is in Elixir, the module ends on the end keyword, but also so do function definitions. So what would end up happening is it would search, and let's see if we can find it anyway. I don't think I'm going to find anything for X unit. Oh, I did find something for X unit. That's interesting. I must have done it slightly wrong. Alexa, stop. Sorry, my Alexa's on. Okay. So as you can see here, now this says, okay, within that range of a line starting with def module and some word and then do and ending with end, find this word X unit, right? So here you see line 37. Here it is, X unit case. And you'll notice, oh, it's deps, not dependencies. I'll have to fix that. You'll notice I did find it in a dependency, which I didn't really want to find. So because this time I did directly from the command line, and because I did from the command line, all my settings that I had in that nice shell script are not there anymore. I would have to put them back manually. As a matter of fact, you'll notice all three of these in the deps directory. This is deps swoosh, this is deps plug, and this is deps ectosequel. So I'm going to fix my shell script right now. Matter of fact, not dependencies, but deps. Okay. All right. But do you see, you kind of get a feeling for the power that this gives you? Because now, rather than searching like everything, if I know for sure it's inside of this, if I knew for sure there was a def module, let's say swoosh, because that's the first one. So I knew for sure there was a def module swoosh, do, and then my range end is the keyword end, and I'm looking for X unit. This time I don't get anything because I don't know if swoosh is exactly what it's called in that one. It's probably test swoosh or swoosh test or something like that. Let me try swoosh dot something else. Well, hold on. Maybe. See if that'll work. Nope, it won't. Okay. But I hope you kind of get the idea of what we're going after here, which is the ability not, again, to kind of like, I don't want to include these results that I don't want. I just want to search for things that start at def module and end at end and have this word in them. It's a lot more effective searching. Okay. Any questions on what I've given so far? Any thoughts or comments? Because remember, I'm not like so much interested in just me talking and everyone else listening. I want to have a conversation. Mike, were you mentioning there's I'm going to stop sharing for a minute.
Yeah, no problem. Yep.
Were you mentioning there's another like grep tool you know of?
Yeah, I was looking at there are a bunch of them actually. So I've been all over the place because like stuff like this, I love it. It's just really interesting, right? There are a lot of things that you can do with this. I was also playing around with some things. And another one that I found valuable over the years is at least with standard grep, you can use a flag called exclude dir, and I'm about to throw a code example in a second in the chat. And what's super cool about this is like, So an Elixir, application, there's a notion of something called an umbrella app. Now, I don't know if these are as well supported or really the way people are doing things these days, but essentially, it's multiple apps bundled under one umbrella, right? So essentially, you're going to have a configuration, right, for each of these. And in Elixir, the standard for defining the configuration files is in a folder called config, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the grep that I just threw in there, since the exclude dir starts with a star, and the search in that grep is recursive, it'll actually ignore every single instance where you ran across a config folder. So whether it's in the top level config or the config 5 folders down, that can be super helpful, right? If you just want to essentially just get rid of noise, right? And I think Onorio, I guess, I never really thought about it, but that a lot of times you really need to get rid of noise, right? Because the whole code base is, let's say 500,000 lines of code, and let's say 2,000 files. And that's the whole noise, right? Like you need to filter down that noise, chop it up, refine it and distill it and get what you actually care about, right? And so I've actually never used ACK. I did start looking at it just a second ago. I just use grep all the time, regular old grep. And then I've used zgrep. I posted something about it in there, which I don't know if people are familiar with this, but this is, let's say you have a whole folder of compressed files, like zipped files. Just to consider how much of a nightmare it is, right, to search through that, because you have to decompress, search, and then actually find what you need. Well, zgrep will just do the decompression for you automatically, and you can search it recursively. So that's another way that you can just another tool, right, that you can find what you need, but without having to worry about decompressing. I'm trying to think of some other. I am interested in that, the bash script the shell script that you created. And also I saw a little RPL file. What's that RPL file, Onorio?
That's Rosie language, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes.
All right. And then I just wanted to make sure you were going to talk about it tonight. I wasn't sure if you were going to, if it just wasn't ready to go and you didn't want to chat about it.
It's not quite what I consider ready for prime time, but since we're kind of having a conversation, I hope you guys won't hold it against me if it's not quite there yet.
We will not.
Okay.
I guarantee it.
Also,
go.
Yes.
Yun Jung had a question.
Okay.
I want to make sure we work her question in.
I have two different questions. So the first one is, right now I see that you are working from terminal, but one of the reasons why you want to search for any pattern or anything is, I think you said you want to get familiar with the code base. Mm-hmm. But when developers look at the code, they typically open an IDE, and they might be searching for things from the IDE, within the IDE. So in that case, can you is there any way to use regex, within the context of IDEs, similar to how you were doing just now, or do you? And that's one thing. And another thing is, another question is about refactoring. I want to know if if you can use regex in refactoring, or how common that is, if that is so.
Okay, so first question, can you use it from within an IDE? A lot of IDEs have regular expression search built right in. It's just not quite as sophisticated as what you get with ACK or with even grep. Because for one thing, I'm pretty sure, I use Visual Studio Code on a pretty regular basis. I do not believe there's a way to tell Visual Studio Code exclude these subdirectories. I think if you say search through files, it's just every file in every subdirectory, and there's no exclusion. I may be wrong on that, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong.
I will say, I feel like Visual Studio Code, it's not quite as intuitive as some other tools that I've used that allow regular expressions. I'll use regular expressions for even stuff like find and replace, especially find, right? You could even do stuff like, \n, right, to find every new line in a document, right? And you can concatenate a lot of data together like that, or that's what minification tools will use to kind of like scrunch everything together and make a more compact file. I haven't used VS Codes a bunch, but I'm thinking, yeah, you may not be able to exclude directories, but it might allow you through the syntax to exclude directories, right? So, or really, yeah, Sublime Text. Somebody mentioned that, Thomas. Dude, Sublime Text is the gold standard for this type of stuff. I used to use the JetBrains IDE, but I still had Sublime on my machine because like doing stuff like vertical column selection, that was before JetBrains supported it. Now everybody supports it, right? Stuff like that, insanely productivity stuff. I try to find as much productivity stuff like that as I can. And
Sublime was life-changing back in the day. Like you say, a lot of tools have the same capabilities, but I still reach for it, muscle memory.
I'm sorry. I got my dog needs my attention for a minute. So you guys talk. I'll be right back.
We can definitely chat. I feel like such a noob here because I haven't used ACK, but that's okay. I'm going to play around with ACK. I'll give you another just plain old grep example that I found to be pretty valuable. There are two flags for it, A and B. And A and B, so A is after, funny enough, and I probably should have ordered them in the opposite order here. B is before. So what you can do, and I'll show you the example of like what this pulled on my computer in some files. So basically, I ran that command, and man, I hope this looks good. Give me a second. Bear with me if it doesn't look good. Might be scrunched because of the chat, but give me a moment. So I'm going to hit go on that. No, it looks okay. So the two dots or the two dashes or hyphens there in the middle are two different results. What was actually found there as I searched for def is the def kind of right dead center in each of these, right? And then I'm going 2 lines above, right, and 2 lines below. So what I found this to be useful for, right, is if let's say I know a configuration exists and I actually need to get the values that are below, let's say the header, right, of the config that I want, let's call it auth, right, in this case. I actually want to see the username, the stuff like, let's say I'm not, bearing this in like, or keeping this extracted in like some sort of a secrets manager, and somehow I'm just looking through actual config files. So that A and B can be super valuable. It confused me for years, really. Like I always thought A was above and B was below, and so and then I have, oh, that's right, B is before and A is after. So that's another cool little one that I like.
Great, thanks for that.
Yep. Yeah.
I was never confused before, and now I'll never be able to think of it again.
Yeah, no, I know.
Just take that to your grave, man.
That's Come fine. On. I'm trying to help. See, productivity. That's what it is.
Now, she had another question. Let's address that before we get away from it, about refactoring. And yes, you can use regular expressions in refactoring. Mostly what you're going to do, though, is you're going to use those to help you find the code you want to refactor. You just yeah, I saw Akbar. Let's go on, Thomas. That you can't. There are tools, I think, that can say, okay, like substitution is a real common refactoring. Like I want to change the name of this variable, and I want it to be smart enough to only change it in the places that I need. That's a common refactoring, and I think regex is maybe involved in that. But I'll tell you, and I think we were talking about this maybe before other people got on. Regexes are really tricky to get right.
I'm just like if I were to do some sort of a database update, right? Like I'd really make sure that filter were. I'll be honest with you. I've been doing this for like 20 years, and I would not reach to doing a replacement on my own with my own brain. Now, the tools like VS Code have some refactoring tools built in, right? So they say, oh yeah, you want to take variable. What do you want to change that to? Oh, would you like me to update the references? I would trust that. And even that can mess it up. I'll be straight up. But I do not trust myself to do something, especially if it's like meaningful. I mean, it's weird, all the little cases you'll get that are correct but not actually correct. Even if your regex is correct, sometimes there are these little side cases where something does match and it should match, but you don't want to actually replace it. So I'd say do it with extreme caution. Actually, I'd just say don't do it, but you find what you need to change. And then you could either use a tool like VS Code's built-in refactor or any of the IDE's built-in refactors, and then, change it using that. So,
yeah, mostly the issue with it, I mean, besides the fact of being very careful about what you find and change, usually the issue is not so much finding and changing things. It's like you have no unit test to ensure that you haven't broken anything when you've changed things. That's usually the issue. You talk about refactoring, you want to have good unit tests to backstop you to make sure you didn't accidentally break some functionality somebody else is relying on. And most of them, you're dealing with legacy code. That's part of the definition of legacy code. There's usually no test. I think Devin had a question too. Did you?
I do. And forgive me because I'm an absolute noob and you'll have to explain things to me like I'm 5. But if we were to kind of boil down all of these different tools into like a top 5 that you should use for searching your code, what would you recommend? And what would be some of the pros and cons of each?
Well, that's an excellent question. I will let Mike and Thomas jump in on this if they want to. I'm personally very fond of ACT because it's easy to use. It's not hard to get on any platform I want to work on. It's there on Windows, it's there on Mac, and it's there on Linux, and those are the big 3. Yeah, a lot of people like just plain old grep, and I can understand why.
I mean, I'm going to try out ACT for sure, but so far my go-to tool, I haven't really found anything I can't do in grep because it supports the regular expression stuff too. I mean, it starts with searching for a string, but it supports everything in between too.
I agree with everything you guys just said. Yeah, ACK I find very approachable, but and on the other hand, there is something to be said for knowing like the standard utilities. And so having some grep under your belt will serve you very well because you'll find so much material online where people are doing pipelines and things with grep. It's really good to know, the essential syntax. And so I would spend some time with grep just for that because it'll serve you well when you're trying to do what all of us do when we get good at something, which is, learn how to look up what you don't know. Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. As far as like other ones, it's interesting. I got to hand it to the people who maintain grep or ACK over the years. They're very nice about on their webpage. They've got a list of other tools that do basically the same thing, like the Silver Searcher, like grep, like stuff like this. They've got pointers to it. It's like, here's another one you might find works really well for you. And I think that's really, that's really pretty decent of them, to do that. As far as downsides, one, they can be hard to learn, honestly, to use them really effectively, because like the thing about the excluding directories and excluding files and stuff like that, I didn't find that for probably the first 2 years I used ACK, and I knew ACK was really good and really handy for doing stuff, but I just never knew about that. And it's like, wow, this is really awesome because I don't want to search through these subdirectories. I know there's nothing in there I want. Another thing is they can be kind of slow sometimes depending on the tool you use. I don't do search all that often. So it's like, when I do search, I want something that gives me the right answer. I don't want to get false positives, and I don't want to get, have it missing things. But it's not something I don't know that I do it on a daily basis, probably more like a weekly basis, I guess. I'm trying to think of some other like things because you ask a real good question there, Devin. It's like I'm trying to think of some other disadvantages of these grepping tools. One thing, kind of along the lines of what is it, Yunlong? brought up was, see, to me, I like IDEs. Those are handy. But I also like having something like ACK, having something like grep handy to me, because that goes beyond what's usually in an IDE. So one of the nicer things you can do with certain IDEs like Visual Studio Code and maybe Visual Studio for all I know, is you can either drop out to a terminal and do your search that way without leaving the editor, or sometimes you can even key the editor such that, hey, I use this special keystroke, it brings up ACK and searches for what I'm wanting, and then puts that out into the terminal for me so I can see it. So that's, like I say, that's something that, is kind of handy to have.
Wait, so you're saying that you can do ACK within IDE and it will generate in terminal outside? Which
Yes.
IDE does that?
Yes. Pretty much any of them should be able to.
Oh, okay.
It's just, because all ACK is doing is, I'm sorry, it's getting a little technical jargon, I apologize. On a terminal, there's a standard input, which is usually the keyboard, and a standard output, which is usually the screen. You can redirect those, though. You can say my standard input comes from another file. So I feed in this other file, and that's my input to my program. And I can make my standard output something else. In this case, ACK can be redirected so it goes to the terminal that is in the IDE.
You just made me think of something else too, which can be super handy. Sometimes you want to actually capture your grep results for later analysis, and you want to open that file. So you can actually redirect the result of standard out from your grep command to a file, right? It's just like the little greater than or whichever one it is, right? I'll throw a quick example in there. That could be super helpful. And then I did want to throw a quick shout out to, especially, well, I think it's only Windows, but Notepad++ has some of the absolute best searching and data filtering that I've ever seen in my whole life. I was just working in automotive where we were working on vehicle CAN network data. There's just so many records with the IoT stuff that's coming through there. And I can filter down to some of that messaging and signal data, just unbelievable. It'll even let you save off those results. So it's called Notepad++. That is a good one for searching, either a code base or even, some of the file parsing stuff. So another thing I wanted to mention too, before I forget, is as you're starting to create your regular expressions or checking for things, especially using just even basic tools like grep, you've got a dot character that matches. So let's say you're looking for something that has a dot in the word itself or in the string itself. So my thing dot my other thing, right? Let's say JavaScript, right? We got some methods or whatnot. What will happen by default is that will match anything that is my thing, and then any character, and then my other thing. You can escape that with a backslash. That you escape the dot with a backslash, so that it's only going to match what you're actually looking for there. And that's just kind of like a pitfall that I see people fall into when they start to search their code bases.
Okay, so now I want to share something else with you in terms of a screen share. The other thing I'm going to be talking about in my talk is, let's see. Sure. Is this Rosie pattern language. Okay. Rosie pattern language. I was saying to people kind of half jokingly earlier that everyone wants regular expressions, but no one wants to write them. Rosie pattern language came out of a research project at IBM. Real nice gal I know named Jamie Jennings led it, Dr. Jennings. And what they realized was regexes are really hard to use, and there's a lot of limitations to regexes. So they created Rosie pattern language to address some of these limitations they saw. For one, you can put comments in regular expressions. It's just not something that people do a lot, and therefore it can be really hard for another developer looking at your regular expression to figure out what you were trying to do. I mean, as I've often said to people, comments tell me what someone was trying to do, because I can see what they did. I mean, that's obvious from the code. You did so-and-so. I can see that. Comments tell me what you were trying to do. What were you trying to accomplish, okay? So they realized this was one big issue with regular expressions. And then they also realized that it was really hard to compose regular expressions. And even beyond that, regular expressions, and I'm going to regret talking in front of someone who's working on her PhD in this, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are levels of parsing grammar. There's the lowest level of like simply breaking it up by spaces, and there's a level above that, which is like where regexes sit, and then there's another level above that, and that's called parser expression grammars. Rosie uses parser expression grammars, which have some nice features like about being able to backtrack and forward track and stuff like this on parsing things out that I honestly can't address, but I will show you some of why I like Rosie. Okay, you'll notice in here I've defined the comment character, which is the pound sign. Again, this is Elixir, and so I've defined comment line as being the comment, the pound sign, followed by any number of spaces, followed by any text. That's what this means, the period star that Mike was just talking about. The period means any character, and the star means 0 or more times. And the dollar sign at the end here means that's the new line, the next line, right? The cool thing about this is I can put test right in here to check my expression, to make sure it's matching what I think it should match and not matching what I don't think it should match. So you'll notice I've got a comment line accepts pound. This is a comment. That should work for sure. And I've got a comment line rejects def module test, which is, again, it's Elixir code, pound and end of line comment. I don't want to catch comments that are partway through the line. That's perfectly legal syntax in Elixir, but it's not what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a comment. Okay? So let me show you what happens. I have to stop sharing this screen and share another screen for a second for you. Let's go back to, I think I can do it here. Oh, sorry. I've got to share it first, don't I? Helps if I share it so everyone can see what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm back to my terminal window, right? And this time, instead of using ACK, what I'm going to do, and this is part that I'm still working on, so I'm still working on a lot of this, so please forgive me. I'm going to say Rosie test, and this will run my unit test inside of my Rosie pattern language definition and make sure that everything is working, right? So, hey, all 17 tests passed. Okay, great, terrific. What does that prove, Onorio? Let's go back and deliberately fix one or change one of these tests to where it won't pass. Okay? So I will just, and I'm not going to show you the editor. I'll just do this and trust me that I'm making it to where it will not pass. And show you what happens. Do it again. But now I've fixed one of the tests where it shouldn't pass. And there, it failed. See, I told it on the comment here that I was showing you earlier that it should reject a line that starts with a comment character and then some characters afterwards. Now, normally I wouldn't do that kind of thing, right? But if somebody comes along and modifies and let me stop sharing this terminal and go back to the REPL, sort of REPL. Somebody comes along and modifies my code to do a different, pattern expression. How do they know that they've gotten it right? How do they know they haven't broken anything? Well, that's where these unit tests come in, right? Someone can look at this and say, oh, okay, I see. I run these unit tests and it should accept this and shouldn't accept that. And this will give me, a firm feeling that when I change this expression, like this alias module name here, I can change it and not have to worry about breaking anything. Okay. Let me revert this back to what it was before I forget. There. Okay. So now also with Rosie, I can take and build up expressions. So you'll see here, I've got a local alias module name. This is a module name in Elixir, right? And my rule is it has to start with an uppercase letter. This is the upper part right here. And it has to have one uppercase letter to start. And then anything after that can be uppercase, can be lowercase. I don't care. And it can also have a period to separate it, right? So you'll notice I've got here, it accepts test. That's fine for a module name. Test.submodule, also fine for a module name. I should also probably add, because it's very common in Elixir, I'll add one right now. That should also work. I want to reject anything that starts with a lowercase letter, and I want to reject anything that starts with a lowercase letter, even if it's got a period and like another one behind it, because those are not legal module names. Okay. Now you might even think, I was thinking to myself as I was working on this, you know, this actually could be kind of handy for like passing the compiler on it. You know, run this through Rosie before you even hand it to the compiler and make sure that Rosie doesn't barf it out before you even run it off the compiler to make sure that everything's working the way it should. It's kind of like a way of specifying the language, how the language should work. Okay. So now I can take this module name here and I can use it in another expression. I have an expression, my module expression is it starts with the keyword def module, which is an Elixir keyword. And then it has this tilde means one or more spaces. It's a shortcut that Rosie built in for one or more spaces. And then a module name. And then another tilde, one or more spaces, and then the word do, which ends the definition of a module, or at least the first line of a module, and then maybe spaces afterwards, right? And down here again, I've got this works, def module test do with spaces behind it should work. Reminds me, I'm going to also add real quick just to make sure I don't forget it. Sorry, I'm editing as I'm talking. I apologize. I'm trying to get this stuff done for a presentation I'm doing. I'm going to add that as well. That should also pass. And this should pass, and it should reject this where I have a lowercase t. Now, how does it know the lowercase t is no good? Well, because I tell it use the module name expression. The module name expression will also reject that lowercase t. Okay, so let me save this real quick. And let me show you what I mean about using a terminal to run something. So I'll do a new terminal here, right? And I want to be an X search. And I want to do Rosie test Elixir REPL. Or Rosie pattern language in this case. And see, I've added 2 tests and they passed. So like this to me is like if you didn't have anything else in Rosie, like nice regular expressions and stuff like that, if you just had those unit tests, you sold me. You already got me at the unit test, you know, because the fact that I can test my expressions and make sure they get what I expect them to get and don't get what I don't expect them to get is incredibly useful. Because that's one of the biggest problems with regular expressions is that, you know, if you change it just a smidge, you remove a space and you don't realize you removed a space, you broke the irregular expression and you have no way of testing it. Well, most people don't bother to write unit tests around regular expressions, and they should, but they don't. So this, like I say, if there were nothing else to recommend Rosie pattern language, this would be it. And Mike knows I've been crushing on Rosie pattern language for quite a time. I really like it. I wish more people knew about it. I think it's a terrific tool. So, like I say, this is what I'm getting to, and what I actually want to get to, and I haven't quite got it yet. I was working on it as I was getting ready to talk to you guys. Let me stop sharing, or I can do it from here, I think. Let me see. It was ETW runner, I think. That's not it. There we go. I thought it was okay. I thought one directory up. What I've been working on is actually with Rosie. You can pass it. You can use that as a grep too. You can do Rosie grep, and then the expression you want, and you tell it, okay, use Elixir to RPL to give you a parent you're interested in, and search for, like, if I were to search for like a function, it would use this function definition up here to figure out what I'm searching for. Okay. I say that's something I'm still working on. So I bring it up, like, just because it's something that you might do. You might even beat me to doing that. And like I say, it's just a much better approach to doing regular expressions, to my mind, than regular expressions. But the problem is, and the reason that so many people use regular expressions is because they're everywhere. They're in Perl, they're in C#, they're in Java, they're all over the place, because every language has added a regular expressions module, and they've all done this thing of here's a regular expression for you to run. And that's great. It will be wonderful if people also had the ability to run these, to put tests right by the regular expression, and then make sure that they all pass, so that they can modify the regular expression without worrying about, am I breaking it? Am I not? So, unfortunately, most people don't do that. So, anyway, like I say, that's basically where I'm at right now. And I will. Did I stop sharing? I did, didn't I? Okay. Yeah, and like I say, if you don't take anything else away from this little conversation tonight, take away. I think Rosie pattern language is well worth looking at. I think it's got a lot to recommend it, and it's not like a Turing complete language, but it's got a lot to recommend it in terms of like pattern matching. She's put a lot of thought into it, and I've seen, like I said, with JavaScript, I'm seeing more and more tools lately where it's like, yeah, you get a regular expression, but we did this thing to make it easier, to make it nicer. And like I say, it's that same thing like JavaScript. It's like, I don't want to write JavaScript. I just want to get JavaScript. Well, they're trying to like do super regular expressions and stuff like this, I think. Anyway, I don't think I have anything else to share at this point. Like I say, honestly, I'm working on my talk, and I appreciate you guys' feedback. It really helps me a lot. But at this point, I think I'm kind of done talking. And if anyone wants to ask questions or anyone has comments, go right ahead. I mean, I've monopolized things for long enough.
just a quick thing. I popped it in chat, but Jamie Jennings did a talk on RPL, Rosie Pattern Language, at our Detroit Tech Watch conference, and I just linked that talk. That isn't a YouTube link; it's Slides Live. I'll see if I can dig up the YouTube one as well, because it definitely exists there. But that is actually, this one might be better because you can actually go through the slides independently. This is pretty sweet, actually, the Slides Live UI. So anyway, that might be helpful in introducing you to it a little bit more. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, and if anybody looks at that and says, "Gosh, I'd like to learn more about that," I'd be happy to point you to Jamie. Is a very friendly person, and she will help anybody with Rosie. And she's also a very smart, like, computer science person too. So if you have a computer science question, you might run it by her too. But like I say, I think it's an absolutely terrific tool, and I wish it got more love than what it does. That's part of the reason I'm talking about it in this talk, and for the Elixir conference, because I think it should get more love than what it does. But like I say, everyone uses regular expressions because they're embedded in so many languages. JavaScript has embedded regular expressions. Perl has regular expressions embedded. C# has regular expressions embedded. Somebody uses it and hacks their way through it and hopes that everything works.
Yeah, pretty much every language has the grep stuff built into it, like egrep or just grep. So probably.
And I admit I have cargo culted expressions forward sometimes that I inherited and that I don't know for 100% what they're doing. I just know that they work, so don't break them.
Right.
And that's never a good feeling.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the truth.
When you were talking about comments, Onorio, before you mentioned the whole big blocks of comment code, and you were talking about why they would be there, and I was laughing to myself because I was going to say sarcastically, because somebody was really afraid to remove that code, even though we have version control these days.
Yeah. That,
I think it happens more often than people think, right?
Yeah. Back in the day, I worked on a VB6 code base, and if you don't know anything about VB6, it doesn't have the ability to comment out blocks of code. You can only comment single lines of code. And so someone had left in the code the construct if true equals false, followed by a bunch of code, and then an end if. I looked at that and I thought to myself, what the heck is that? And what had occurred to me was that they had basically done that to comment out a block of code.
Yes.
It looked so weird. It's like, okay, this will never execute because true will never equal false. So they've effectively commented out this code is what they've done. And it's like, yeah, that just like, wow, that's clever, but that's also really poor,
Yeah. Especially if it gets left in there somehow, right? Like, and the intention is not to have it left in there, right? It'll just never hit that code. So,
yeah. And like I say, to me, the biggest issue I have with leaving in dead code, that people have commented out these sections of code is searching. That's my biggest pet peeve about it. It's like I'm searching for some symbol in the code, and I keep hitting these things that are commented out, and I don't want to hit them because it's just wasting my time,
You just reminded me of something called dead code elimination. I'm sure some of us know what this is, but basically there are tools, and in certain languages where things are inferred, it can even you can run, like Elm is a language that's built on Haskell. It's purely functional, and its compiler will actually automatically show you dead code paths, and then you can choose to keep them in there if it's something you mocked or whatever. But there's, we're talking about static analysis tools and different tools in general. There's some dead code elimination tools that are pretty helpful.
Yeah,
because you're basically they can figure out if you'll ever reach that code.
Right. And I mean, I don't know if anybody besides maybe Mike and I, or maybe Thomas, I don't know. Well, anybody else would know about this, but there was a bug a few years ago called the heartbleed bug, and you probably heard about it. And it basically came down to, in C, which was what this was coded in, if you have an if statement, if you don't put in curly braces around the if statement, then what gets executed is the line immediately below the if that's true. And then the third line, the line below that, gets executed regardless. And somebody didn't put curly braces around it, and they must have meant to because they were both indented. So what would happen is part of the time it would execute the line immediately below, most of the time, in fact, and then it would execute that third line regardless. And I think what they meant was, and I'm pretty sure, like the resolution was, they meant to put curly braces around it, so both lines either got executed or both lines either didn't get executed. And now that sounds like, wow, that's really dumb. How come they didn't get that? But this was code that had been seen by literally thousands of people, experienced C developers who should have known better, and yet it persisted for years. And only because somebody exploited this and used it to cause problems did somebody actually say, wait, hold on, this isn't right. This should be fixed. And that's, like I say, that's thousands of developers, experienced C developers who should have known better. Now you take that and you take some junior developer who's, they're doing their best. They do what they can, but they don't know the language as well as a senior does.
Mhm.
And you give them a code base and say, here, fix this. Well, that's even more likely to lead to, I can't understand this and I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just going to throw in this hack because it works, which ultimately will end up with being a vulnerability, So
I was
yeah,
resisting the urge to say something about meaningful white space, but mainly because Python has its own share of idiomatic things that can really bite you on the ass. So every language has them,
Right.
curly braces or not. So yeah, a little humility, I guess, right?
Yeah.
They could be any of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I told somebody I used to think that like indentation sensitive was good, and then I remember and I played with F sharp, which is also indentation sensitive, and to the point where if you put 3 spaces versus a tab character, it's different to the F sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elm will not accept tabs at all. It's got to be space based.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's easy enough to fix in the editor. Like if I put a tab here, change it into spaces, that's easy to fix. But the first time it bites you, you think, oh, this is like the old make files, man. This is ridiculous. Why does this not work?
Yeah, that kind of stuff has bit me, especially if you go across platforms and stuff like that. And like I swear, right? Like those. Oof.
Yeah, open the file in a different editor that doesn't have spaces converted to or tabs converted to spaces, and put a
and
tab
then
in
commit
there.
the file, and then you go across platforms. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
there's some very interesting stuff. In the more recent past, I've started to just like build in normalization routines, like using Prettier to like format stuff with a certain.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Git has it to some degree too, right? But where you're always committing it, as whatever, and you're checking it out into the native local system. Even that sometimes can have some problems though. So like I'll actually set up in CI like a Prettier routine to like normalize that code before, so the next person who pulls it down, like they're definitely getting a correct version of it.
I like that. I do like code formatter and linter for Python. It's called Black.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them, like Prettier and for JavaScript, right? But Black is my favorite because it has like 0 knobs, right? It is like draconian and opinionated, and there's only one way to do it.
By the way,
and like for a linter,
for
a linter, it's such a relief to like go,
you don't have to
it's
think
one of those
about
times
it.
where you just need to conform and like get over yourself because it'll save you so much pain as a team. Anyway, it's named it's a Henry Ford joke. You can have it in any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. That's actually really cool, Thomas. I play around with Python from time to time. I'm using whatever the default code formatter is.
Yeah, like Pep 8, Flake 8, something like that.
Exactly,
PyFlakes. Yeah, that's the problem. There's so many, right?
Exactly.
There's so many ways to do it correctly. And you have an embarrassment of choice. But yeah, so Black was simplify my life,
And Thomas, you were mentioning earlier about the presence of a .acrc, which is a good idea. And the only reason I didn't use that for my talk, and at least the first part of my talk, is because, again, if I take my shell script to somebody else's machine and they'll have that acrc, I don't want to have to worry about, oh, wait, hold on, I don't have this acrc, and so it behaves differently. By building everything I need into the shell script as much as I can make it a little more portable. That's all.
Makes perfect sense.
You're totally right. I would use an acrc in practice.
With code bases in general, right? Like RCs, when I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, like I always try and find the RC for whatever I'm using because like that it's unification, right? So in the code bases, like we've got the Prettier RC and pretty much any type of thing we're doing, right? And that way everybody's just they run off the same standard, right? Like we're all the same. We're all doing it the same. It's really nice if, like you said, with like this Black code formatter, that it just is the same. There are no knobs.
I mean, I got to admit,
I like that. Not everybody likes that, but I actually like that. I don't like to think about this stuff.
I mean, I chafe at it. I still chafe occasionally, but I'm like, it's for the greater good, right?
There you go.
It's saving me from myself.
Right? Taking one for the team.
Yeah.
And if anyone doesn't know what a .rc, what we're talking about, .rc is convention like on Linux, Unix, and Mac OS X too, I think.
Yeah.
Where when you want certain configuration settings, you put them in this .rc file, and the code, the application itself is smart enough to look for this .rc file. And if it finds it, it uses that to set up, configuration settings, like what font do I want to use, and what color do I want to display this in, and this kind of thing. It's just a conventional thing.
Yeah, and it's usually, just as a tidbit to that, it's usually the name of like the tool you're using, RC. So the name of the tool you're using, RC. So it's .ac RC, and it's .bash RC, right? Like, or whatever it is. Generally, it's the tool name, and then just RC, the letters RC, all lowercase.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for this talk, Onorio. It's been enlightening.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. I
thank all
appreciate
of you.
putting up with the fact that it's not really a talk per se, but
No, it's been good dialogue. It's been interesting to hear you guys go back and forth.
Thank you for your questions too, Devin, and conversation. Thanks everybody, and thanks Collider for making all of this possible.
Hey,
Ryan and team.
Thank you all for coming and showing us that we're relevant, and we just have a good time together. So thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for showing up too.
And Detroit Tech Watch, per usual. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just love talking shop. This is why, talking with other people who know something about software development is just one of my biggest pleasures in life. So, okay. Well, I think that's it. Join us next month for To Be Determined. I haven't figured out what we're going to do just yet, but hopefully it'll be something interesting. And
it will be, I guarantee
the rest of the summer while it's here.